to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
Hello, all Antiochian men in the Diocese of Miami in the Southeast. This is Michael Bachlig once again, and I have so enjoyed being with you for these episodes in our Ask Father Hans series. And we have Father Hans back with us. Good morning, Father Hans. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Michael, and good morning, Antiochian men.
Here's our next question, and it is a big one. What is the Orthodox view of what some in our society call toxic masculinity?
Oh, that is a big one. It's a politically charged one.
Yes, it is.
All right. I think about these things a lot, actually. I find it a very offensive phrase, but it's calculated to be offensive. So I tried to get beyond the offensiveness of it and analyze it and what is really being done. First of all, I want to say this: there's no such thing as toxic masculinity, because the only thing that really exists is toxic people. I will agree that people are toxic, and we know this. Not everybody, but there are such things as toxic people. They bring poison into relationships and so on and so forth, and it has to be dealt with appropriately and in a Christian way. And it takes some understanding and some discernment on how to do this. And people are more than their toxicity. I'm giving all the caveats that are needed, but nevertheless, they are still toxic. So that exists. But what about toxic masculinity? What it does, it objectifies masculinity, and this is its purpose, right? As if it's an element divorced from the person, and gives it a negative cast. It becomes a pejorative. It's like masculinity can be abstracted from the person, but it can't, because masculinity, like femininity, are expressed by persons. Now, here's why it has fundamentally a political and polemical character. Because if you can brand masculinity as toxic, then all males have the potential of sharing this toxicity, right? And can be identified with that, and more important, I think, can be compelled to self-identify their own masculinity as toxic. Now, I'm talking about essentially the polemical, political character of that phrase, but I think that it has been effective to a certain degree, because there's such an assault on toxic masculinity in our culture that is generalized as an assault on masculinity in general, that men have assimilated the invective of this assault, and they've lost their way. They've lost their way. Masculinity is a gift from God, just as femininity is. And masculinity is real, although it's expressed in the male, just as femininity is real and expressed by the female. But you can't generalize the masculine out of the person, and you can't generalize the feminine out of the person and make it a substance with a political character. You can't do that. It's in the person. But because it has been generalized and because it has been politicized, as I said, men hear this and they get confused. They feel under attack about their own masculinity. Why do we let that happen? Masculinity is a constituent of our own personhood, the male person. just like femininity is a constituent of the female. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity then. There's only toxic people. And I know toxic males and I know toxic females, right? And the toxicity is a personal problem in the person, whatever it is. They have to deal with that. The toxicity affects others, but it affects them as well. But that's a whole different issue. It's a counseling, psychological issue. The masculinity part, because it is projected as something that is inherently evil, weak, whatever it is, under suspicion. The masculinity part, as I said, gets internalized, and the guys, men, you've got to throw that off. Look at who is making the charge. The people who make that charge are usually those who don't really recognize the masculine and the feminine distinction as legitimate. That's the truth. It's this whole notion of that masculinity and femininity lie along a horizontal spectrum, and people can be on different places in the spectrum irregardless of their biological matrix, their biological makeup. All right, so it's political, it's ideological, it's something that has to be rejected, this whole notion of a horizontal continuum, because it seeks in the end to obliterate biological distinctions completely, the male and the female, and meld it all into one. Why? Because if you meld it all into one, you can manipulate culture according to a grand design of what you think the future should be. That's the truth. The one thing that stands against that is what? It's family. And what is, see, we're a troubled culture. We're a very troubled culture. But how is the family constructed? The family is constructed with father and mother and children. To destroy father, you have to destroy the concept of masculine. If you destroy the father, the family collapses. If the family collapses, in the end, you can destroy the fatherhood of God by removing God from the cultural memory. At that point, all the Christian structure, the structure of culture that has been brought in from Christianity, and keep in mind that religion is always the ground of culture, and it doesn't matter what culture that is. If there's no religion, in the end, there's no culture. And our culture is founded exclusively on the precepts of the Christian religion, of the Christian faith, that sees God as Father. If you can remove God as Father from the cultural memory, you can change the culture into the image of your own God. That's what this is really about. So yes, there are toxic people that exist. There's toxic males and there's toxic females. But this notion of toxic masculinity is really an ideological notion that is used to declare warfare on the male and make him self-conscious and insecure and confused about his own masculinity, so that the masculine dimension, which is expressed in fatherhood, can be removed from the culture, and it's grounded ultimately in a revolt against God. That's what is going on here. And men need to be awake to that, and men need to resist the assaults, beginning in their own heart, against their God-given and God-created masculine identity. Resist that, say no to that, and in that, cherish the female, cherish the feminine. See, this is getting a little longer than usual, but see, here's the truth about ideological feminism. Ideological feminism hates the patriarchy, but in order to attack the patriarchy, they have to attack the female too. So as toxic masculinity is being attacked, so is God-given femininity being undermined. It works hand in hand. So women who are alert and awake to the real structure of creation and their own character and being should understand too that this assault on the male is also an assault on the female. And as men should cherish and build, the women should celebrate their capacity for creating life in the structures that men build. That's how a culture is created. That's how a culture is nourished. And these ideas have to be examined closely and I think ultimately rejected in order for the culture to flourish into the future.
Open to me the doors of repentance, O life giver, for my soul goes early to the temple of thy holiness, coming